So yeah, so for those of you who are just joining the recording part, I forgot to record the rest of it, so yeah, sorry. These Pokemon, starting here, these are what we've done so far. I'll probably go back over them at the end. Those who are watching the stream can leave, I guess, after that, but I'll do a quick run through. But these are the mandatory Pokemon for each type that I've gone over so far. So yeah, sorry for forgetting to record that. That's my bad. But nevertheless, going going forward, we're on Ghost. So yeah, Ghost is another one where we just don't have a lot of options, especially in Pixelmon, as we don't get a lot of that fun stuff. So Ghost kind of sucks simply because there's not a lot of good options, and the good options we do have are all really frail. Like we don't get Aegislash or Mega Sableye or Cofagrigus or Jellicent, which would all be great, but we don't get them. So yeah, it kind of is not that good of a monotype. Bottom tier, certainly. But nevertheless, mandatory is going to be Sableye, even though it's not Mega, unfortunately. You need that dark typing so you don't just get swept by other ghost moves. As well as it helps with physical attackers. It can be your physical wall. It's the only thing with any semblance of bulk. So yeah. After that, you have Golurk. Why Golurk? Golurk sucks. Yes, you are right. But it gets Stealth Rocks, and it is a physical attacker, which is two things you cannot say about any other ghost type, really. It is literally the only one that gets Stealth Rocks, and there are not many other physical attackers out there. After that, Gengar, because Gengar's awesome. It's fast and can wall break. That's why you have it, basically. Uh, Chandelure is mandatory because of how strong it is. That is the only reason. It doesn't do anything else besides wall break or revenge kill with the Choice Scarf. And then Drifblim is unfortunately necessary, I guess, because it is the only ghost type that gets hazard removal, which you will need if you have a Chandelure. So it gets defog. No ghost type gets rapid spin until Gen 7, and none of the other ones we have get defog. So yeah, that is unfortunate. But those are going to be your 5 mandatory ones. After that, you can choose, I don't know. Vesmadius doesn't really do anything Gengar doesn't. Uh, Frostlass is, I guess, a suicide lead if you want more hazards. Dusclops can be a bad win con, I guess. And that's really about it. So yeah, not a lot of options here. Ghost is not a good monotype. Don't use it unless you have a specific reason to, such as you know you're facing a psychic team or something. Yeah. Next we have Grass, which is a fun one. Not a good one, but it's fun. I like grass types. Everyone should like grass types. They're cool. Um, Actually, Inven points out that Shed Ninja is an option on the Ghost team. It is an option, actually. It's kind of an interesting option because uh, you will. It can provide a neat win con against some teams, but against other teams, it'll just be complete dead weight, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess you could run Shed Ninja on your Ghost Mono. But anyway, grass teams. Actually, in the quote, recent updates, we actually got a lot of
User
stuff
entered
grass
your
needs.
channel.
However, we are still missing some things that it needs, such as, most notably, Ferrothorn. That would be great if grass got it. But it doesn't, sadly. So it kind of suffers because it has obviously a lot of weaknesses, and it can't cover them all too well, but we can attempt to do that. So Cradily is going to be our first mandatory one because it is neutral to flying, fire, and poison, and it can set Stealth Rocks, which is helpful against fire, flying, bug, and ice, all of which threaten
User in your channel timed
grass
out.
teams, obviously. Um, so yeah, you're just gonna want to be like probably a special wall for Cradily. Um, After that we have Ludicolo. That's not how you spell that. Ludicolo, because it's a switch into ice and fire. Maybe Assault Vest, I guess. Ludicolo just for extra bulk. Either way, it's there for the typing, same as Cradily, not because it's good necessarily. But yeah. Uh, After that, the only other one that I consider mandatory is going to be Mega Venusaur, thanks to Thick Fat and general good stats. Um, so yeah, it makes you only weak to Psychic and Flying, which is nice for this team, obviously. And after that, I mean, just looking at your options, I mean, Superior, Breloom, like those could be useful, I guess. Leave any for Sticky Web. I guess they could be useful, but they're not mandatory or anything. Just depends on your team. Ground? We're getting there. We're over halfway through. I'll try to speed up a little bit since I now have to go back and talk about the ones I've already talked about. Um, but ground, yeah. So starting off, we need ground is a lot better on like Showdown than it is in Pixelmon because, as I mentioned earlier, we're missing Landorus, not necessarily Landorus, but we are missing Landorus. We're missing Camerupt, Mega, Hippowdon, and Excadrill, as well as things like Seismitoad, all of which are staples on normal ground teams, but we don't have, so ground kind of is not nearly as good in Pixelmon. So we need, but that being said, we do need a water immunity, and Gastrodon's probably the best one. It is the best one, because it's better than Quagsire at being a water immunity. So yeah, Storm Drain, Gastrodon's gonna be very important. Also, Mamoswine is going to be mandatory because it threatens grass types. It has thick fat, which gives it a resistance to ice, and
User left your
it
channel.
can also learn superpower, which is helpful for taking on the normal type, normal core of Chansey and Porygon 2. After that, your options start getting kind of sparse. I mean, you could run Gliscor for the grass neutrality. You could run Nidoking for grass neutrality and just being generally a good wall breaker. But likewise, Camerupt has a nice typing but bad stats. It's just not the greatest monotype. As leaders of the ground gym can attest, there's been a lot of complaints about that team over the years, and it's simply because we can't do much with it. Now we get to the one everyone's been waiting for, uh, Ice, which is unquestionably the worst. Unquestionably. I mean, Electric was pretty bad, but Ice is even worse because, well, it's Ice type. You only resist yourself. And if you find someone else who is running an Ice Mono, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know why either of you would be doing that. But Ice has a Stealth Rocks weakness as well. It doesn't get any really useful dual typings at all. It has no really good way to remove the rocks either. So basically everything that could go wrong with a monotype does go wrong with ice. So never use ice, please, unless you just really want to challenge yourself. But anyway, I'll make an attempt to build a nice team, I guess. So with we're gonna start out with Frostlass, cause it's Ghost type, and that's immune to
User joined your
fighting.
channel.
I mean, sure, it has awful defenses and is never run defensively, or nor does it have recovery, and doesn't want to take any coverage moves from fighting types. But hey, it's immune to their stab, I guess. You can take one of them down with you with Destiny Bond, so that's something. After that, we have Cloyster. Pretty good Pokemon on its own. Not so good for ice teams. Because, it runs its Shell Smash set. That's basically all it does. I mean, you can run Rapid Spin, but I don't think you should on an Ice Mono. This is your team's answer to Fire teams, because it gets Skill Link Rock Blast as well as Stab Water moves. So that can kill a Fire type, I guess. The issue being that you're probably running Sash, probably, uh, and Hazards as well as Priority kind of screws that over, both of which Ice teams are really weak to. So yeah, that's gonna make Cloister have a hard time doing his job. But in the right circumstances, he could do some work, I guess. Next, we have a fan favorite, or a personal favorite at least, Lapras. Why is Lapras here, you say? Well, it's because it's water ice. It has a non-garbage special attack stat, and it can run HP Fire with specs to kill Caesar. This is your answer to Caesar. This is what we have to run. Don't do this to yourself. You have to run this. This and Walrein. This is actually not the worst option to beat Scizor. Walrein is. That's how bad this monotype is. But you have to run this in order to not get swept by Scizor. Scizor is annoying. It it makes these matchups unfair. But yeah. Anyway, um yeah, so after that, after we get rid of those flaws, because they're all gone now. Those things fix those flaws completely. Um yeah, so after that we go to another option of either Mamoswine or Pillow-Swine. You might think Mamoswine is superior. It is superior in that it has more offensive presence, but Pillow-Swine can run Eviolite and be bulkier and have switch-ins to overall it's just a switch-in to fire, I guess. You're neutral to fire. So since it's a switch-in, you probably want to be Eviolite Pillow-Swine over Mamoswine, but you can run either one, really. It also is a switch-in to electric teams, which Ice struggles with, and the fact that it struggles with the other weakest monotype should tell you a lot. Like, not only is it bad, but it loses quite severely to the other worst monotype. So yeah, uh, those are your options. They get Stealth Rocks. Hazards help you a good bit, like they do any team, but you're still gonna lose. Sorry, because you're running an Ice Mono. And then lastly, for mandatory stuff, this is just something I decided was mandatory. I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think Cryogonal is mandatory because it is the best Rapid Spinner Ice has. Although, considering its only other competition is Delibird, that's not saying much, since Cloyster doesn't want to run Rapid Spin because it's doing other stuff with Shell Smash, in my opinion. Normally you would run Avalok here, but we don't get that, so Cryogonal it is. So yeah, this thing's just here for Rapid Spin. That's all it's here for. I mean, I guess it gets Freeze Dry for water teams, but you're kind of screwed against those anyway. Um, so yeah, it's got good special bulk, good speed. That's a positive. Um, After that, you have one team slot left, and as far as stuff we have access to, Articuno wouldn't be bad because it's neutral to fighting. Um, Regice is bulky, I guess, but it doesn't have recovery, so Articuno is probably better. You could run Walrein, as I said, for another answer to Caesar. Uh, Weavile's not bad just because it's generally good. It's not giving you any team sport per se, but it is generally a good Pokemon. Jinx can give you sleep, and it is technically neutral to fighting, but that base 35 defense stat, she doesn't want to be switching into any fighting moves, you know? So don't try to make that her role if you use her. Likewise, Delibird. Delibird's just so awesome. Like, if you're running an Ice Monotype, you might as well just run Delibird. Just go balls to the wall, you know? Just go all in. Why not? But yeah, I'm sure I've convinced you all to use Ice Monos. And yeah, Inven, you can make me that Ice Mono, but I'm not using it. It loses, like, I'm pretty sure it loses to Grass. I'm pretty sure. I'm sure it would. Uh, and even like its primary role in would be like to anti-meta dragon teams, but dragon's useless on Pixelmon, so it can't even do that. So literally everything it's good at already sucks, besides flying, I guess. But even flying has like answers to it. So yeah, please, for the love of God, don't use ice. If you have any intent to win, please don't use ice. Anyway, on to a more viable typing in normal. Um, Normal, the appeal to normal is that it has the best wall core in Monotype, which is going to be Chansey and physically defensive Porygon 2. Chansey walls basically every special attacker. Porygon 2 has great mixed defenses with Eviolite, and it can wall a lot of things as well. Um, but yeah, Chansey you're going to run basically the same set you run in OU. Porygon 2, probably the same set, except you're going to be physically defensive instead of special, which is what you usually run in UU or RU, depending where you are. But yeah, you're going to run your usual sets there. Something that you're not going to run a usual set on, I have discussed this with a few people, but Staraptor is actually in Monotype defensive, which is I think is really cool. I don't know, maybe that's just me, because you think of it as the reckless nuke, but it actually runs Intimidate and like a defensive set with Impish. So you're gonna run Defog because it's the only thing that can get rid of hazards besides like Braviary, but this is better than Braviary, so why would you run Braviary? And Brave Bird. So what this does is it gets rid of hazards and it can kill fighting types. It is basically your only answer to fighting types unless you're running Girafarig, which you should not be running. Just a heads up in case you didn't know. Girafarig sucks. So yeah, you'd run like U-turn Roost or something like that, you know? Just to deal with fighting types. And then besides that, I mean, normal types got a lot of options. It really wishes it had Mega Lopunny. It doesn't. It really wishes it had Meloetta. It doesn't. Uh, But you could run Snorlax, you could run Porygon Z, you could run Braviary for double the answers to fighting types. Ursaring's not bad, Tauros is pretty good, Exploud, etc. There's a plenty of other options. These are really just your core that you have to have. Get some offensive mons in there after that. So yeah, it's Normal's claim to fame is the wall core. It's pretty hard to break for some teams. Offensive mons, not quite as good for it. But now we get to poison. Poison is not a bad type. It can be kind of anti-meta because uh, while it is kind of weak to some common types, it also fares pretty well against some common types such as water, and surprisingly it does decently against psychic, which is pretty common. But again, limitations of Pixelmon does kind of come in here. So yeah. Starting out, mandatory Mega Venusaur, thick fat, neutrality to ground. Enough said. Um, in Pixelmon, we have to have Drapion, as it is your switch into psychic types. Skuntank is an option on Showdown, but we don't have that. Uh, Nidoking is also mandatory for steals. Probably a Wall Breaker set, maybe Choice Scarf, but it's mainly there to answer steel types because Poison has a very bad matchup against steel, so Nidoking is essential to help with that. After that, we have Scolipede, which, like for bug teams, is very useful as it can. Well, it is your main offensive answer to psychic teams. Drapion's a switch in. Scolipede just comes in and sets up Sword Stance and Speed Boost and or Sword Stance. Uh, so it can sweep psychic teams on its own if they're not properly prepared. On top of that, it has the coverage, as I showed earlier, Earthquake, Rock Slide for flying, as well as Steel. So Scoliped's very useful. And lastly, I think Gengar's pretty important just because A, it has Levitate, and B, it's just really good. Why would you not want a Gengar? So after that, after you have these 4 to 5, I mean, Tentacruel can have extra bulk, Roserade for sleep, uh, Weezing is immune to ground, I suppose. We wish we got a Moongus. Crobat and Golbat could be defoggers. Uh, that's probably about it. I guess you could run Sticky Web Ariados if you're really desperate. But yeah, that's poison. So, Psychic. Psychic is one of the best uh, monotypes, but in Pixelmon, it really suffers because we don't get Meloetta, which means you have to run Girafarig. Otherwise, you're going to get swept by ghost moves. Now, as I said, ghost monotypes aren't very popular, but you, I mean, you don't really want to risk foregoing that ghost resistance. So you kind of have to run Girafarig, unfortunately. As much as I hate to say it. After that, Slowbro is essential because great physical bulk. It is the only thing that can tank a U-turd and then pivot out thanks to Regenerator. Nothing else on this team wants to take U-turns because we don't have access to, where is it, Victini, which is normally a really important member of these teams Another thing that Psychic's missing that it wishes it had. But anyway, other than that, Gardevoir is going to be necessary because Fairy, the opposite of what she does for the Fairy team, she can hit Darks and Dragons with her Fairy Stab. That's why she's there. Uh, Mew is probably going to be mandatory uh, in this because it gets Will-O-Wisp and base 100 speed, which allows it to outspeed and burn Bisharp, and Bisharp is a pretty big threat for this team. It can also stall break or wall break, so that's pretty useful. If you don't have Mew, you need another Bisharp check, and there's not many of them. And then we also have our same question of Medicham versus Gallade. And again, it's kind of the same answer, although more so, you probably want to run Gallade because not only is it a little bulkier, not only does it get knockoff for ghosts, it also gets Justify, which is useful for psychic teams, unlike fighting, because it can come in on a dark attack, which you'll see a lot of, and get that Justified boost. So Gallade's going to be better than Medicham, sadly, because I like Medicham. So yeah, that's basically all the ones that are mandatory. I guess Mew's not technically mandatory as long as you have some sort of Bisharp check, but there's not many of those out there. For Psychic, Jirachi would also be useful on the team, as when Metagross either or, probably not both, they do similar things. Besides that, I mean, Delphox could be run as a poor man's Victini, but one of Victini's main roles is beating Volcarona, which Delphox cannot do, simply because it's a special attacker and not a physical attacker. So yeah, probably not Delphox. Starmie gets Rapid Spin, whatever. It's not a big deal for you. Alakazam's useful, always, etc. I really hate that you have to run Giraffrig. This would be such a better team if you had Meloetta. But anyway. Rock. So Rock's a strong mid-tier team. They're not that, despite their numerous weaknesses, they're not a weak team at all. Um, but they do struggle in some of the stronger teams, such as Water and Steel. So it's not a top tier team. It can be seen as, I like to think of it as an anti-meta choice, although since Water and Steel are most popular now, that's not really the case. So yeah. But Rock has a good number of options, but the most important one is definitely going to be Tyranitar, because Sandstream will boost his entire team's special defense, which is really useful. On top of that, he can run a Choice Band Wallbreaker set or an Assault Vest set just for extra bulk. After that, Cradily is also necessary thanks to Storm Drain, giving you the water immunity. It's also neutral to ground, so it can check both water and ground types, and under sand it has really high special bulk, so this is your main special wall. Then we can start getting into more variable stuff. Shuckle is run on almost all of these teams, purely because he gets Sticky Web. Since not a lot of rock types are very fast, they really appreciate the Sticky Web support, because a lot of them hit hard but can't go very fast. So Sticky Web's really big for rock teams. So yeah, Shuckle is pretty mandatory, I'd say, simply for that reason. After that, we have Rhyperior. Now, Rhyperior runs a slightly different set from what he normally runs. It's going to be defensive with Solid Rock, uh, just, like max out defenses, the EVs. And then he'll run either leftovers or weakness policy. I kind of like weakness policy better because he can take basically any physical attack and live thanks to his defenses in Solid Rock. And he is your only good answer to some threats, such as Metacham, less so because there's no Mega, but Metacham and Scizor. Scizor is the main problem here, but with Fire Punch, he can take the hit from Scizor, the Bullet Punch, Superpower, whatever, and activate Weakness Policy, and then kill with Fire Punch. So he's going to be your main physical wall. You're going to have to use him carefully since Weakness Policy is only going to activate once, and he can only take these super effective hits once or twice. But he prevents you from getting swept by Scizor. And then after that, it really depends. I'd probably say that Omastar is mandatory because it's the only good special attacker that we have access to, since we unfortunately do not get Mega DNC. So Omastar is probably mandatory with like a Sash Shell Smash set or something similar. And then the sixth one's just up to you. But yeah. Now we go on to the most popular one on Pixelmon apparently is Steel, which is, to be fair, a pretty good one. Steel has the most resistances of any type, and it has a therefore it has a great matchup against a lot of other types. And not to mention the fact that a lot of its counters aren't very good in Pixelmon. Ground being the notable one. Fighting isn't quite as good as it would be otherwise. Fire has to deal with the Stealth Rock weakness, so it's not amazing. So yeah, Steel is pretty good. Uh, However, they are missing a couple of Pokemon, such as Ferrothorn, but Heatran is obviously going to have to be here for Flash Fire. Likewise, Skarmory has to be there for ground immunity and fighting neutrality, as well as just walling and controlling hazards with Defog. And then finally, Scizor is going to be mandatory as well. Neutral to ground, neutral to fighting. He wins some matchups on his own thanks to Bullet Punch. You have to use him. After that, Steel's pretty straightforward. Jirachi is useful for typing and good stats. Metagross, likewise. Registeel is usable. I wouldn't really recommend it because it doesn't have anything over, say, Skarmory or Heatran as far as walling. Empoleon's helpful for more of a buffer against fire types, as well as offering defog. Lucario could run special, which is something not a lot of seals do. And other than that, there's not much worth using. Oh, worth talking about. I mean, you could run like Bisharp or whatever, but nothing else really jumps out. So yeah. Lastly, we are on the last one. It is the most complicated one. Or perhaps most fun? I don't know. Water. Water is the only type that can run any type of team, balance, offense, or stall, mainly because it's the only team that can run stall. Um, but that being said, offense and balance are definitely more popular. So I guess I'll start out with just going over uh, the balance. So balance, you're going to start out with one of two defensive cores. The first core is going to be Lantern and Empoleon. Lantern for the Volt Absorb, Electric Immunity. Empoleon's neutral to grass. Good core. though they are weak to ground together, so that's not ideal. The other core you can run is going to be Swampert for the electric immunity, and Tentacruel for the grass neutrality. Uh, Obviously, you're going to be physically defensive, specially defensive, physically special. You get it. This one is arguably better than that one because it doesn't leave you super weak to ground. However, the and also on top of that, rapid spin and spikes compared as well as stealth rocks compared to just defog and rocks. So it'll depend on the
User
rest of your
disconnected
team,
from your
but
channel.
Swampert and Tentacruel is probably more splashable, more widely useful. But either way, either of these cores work. Now that's balance. You're going to start with that and then move on to whatever other water types you want. But as far as offense goes, rain offense is basically a rain team without the usual electric types. So you'll obviously be running Politoed on your rain offense team. However, do note that Damp Rock is banned in Monotype. So you're only going to get those 5 turns of rain. So you're probably going to have a secondary setter somewhere. And then as far as offense goes, the only mandatory sweeper I'll say exists is Kingdra, simply because it's got a great typing. It's just strong in general. After that, you can use whatever other rain sweepers you want, be it Ludicolo or uh, Omastar, whatever you want. It's your standard rain team after that. Just remove the electric types that you usually throw in there. So yeah. Now, I'm gonna segment that by saying balance slash offense. Can't use, okay, fine. Balance offense, we're just gonna be one word. This will be water stall, because water stall is a little more complicated, or less freedom, at least. Water stall is interesting because you have to have these Pokemon. You have to have Empoleon, you have to have Quagsire, you have to have Azumarill, Lantern, and for the sake of Pixelmon, Vaporeon. Empoleon has the grass neutrality, it has special bulk, it has hazard control. That's Empoleon. That's why it's there. Steel is also a nice typing to add on to that, good resistances. Quagsire is there to be an unaware user. You won't get swept by setup sweepers. Uh, Azumarill does not run the standard set. This is the only place where you will see a viable Sap Sipper Azumarill. It is a very valuable grass immunity, which any stall team, well, any water stall team really appreciates. It'll give you, you won't hit very hard, obviously, without the huge power, but it's useful for support sets. Lantern's there for Volt Absorb, obviously. Vaporeon's interesting because normally on a water stall team you would run Alomomola here, but because it's a good wish passer, because as you notice, Empoleon, Azumarill, Lantern, none of those things get recovery, which is kind of a big deal for a stall team. So you need a wish passer. And in Pixelmon, the best water type wish passer we get is Vaporeon. It is actually the only one. I didn't realize that, but yeah. So it's not as good a Alomomola, but since it's what we've got, it's what we've got. Got to use it. So you're gonna run Wish here, and that's gonna be what it provides to the team. And then after that, you can run. Let's see. You could run another wall. I don't know, like maybe Suicune or something. Or you can run an offensive Pokemon like Gyarados or Sharpedo or something just to deal with those offensive threats that you need help with. But overall, Water balance and water offense are going to be stronger than stall, I'd say, but it can be something that catches your opponent off guard, certainly. So yeah, that is all of the types. That is my breakdown of them. Uh, I guess now for the purposes of helping out those who are watching this on YouTube, I will go through the ones that I neglected to record really quickly. So if you're still in the Twitch, which I think it might just be, it's just kind of madness. So yeah, you can leave if you want. It's just gonna be rehashing it. But yeah, I'll run through these really quick. And again, apologies for forgetting to record. I know I promised I'd do that. But yeah, Bug struggles because it has the Stealth Rock weakness, which really hurts some of its most important members. However, it does have some options at hazard control, such as Armaldo is the best one because it has the rock typing, can set its own hazards, and has rapid spin. But Fortress is also usable, as well as a couple of defog users, but defog's really quite inferior for bugged monos. Uh, Scizor is going to be mandatory thanks to Bullet Punch providing automatic wins against some teams, Ice, Rock if they're not prepared, etc. Um, that being said, he is not at all useful against fire teams. He will be dead weight against any fire mono, so keep that in mind. Obviously, you still have to use him. He's too good not to, but yeah. Volcarona is very useful against steel monos, which bug teams tend to struggle against. It can also switch into some fire attacks thanks to its nice special defense, and it's also obviously a good quiver dancer. That being said, it has very low defense and a 4 times weakness to stealth rocks, which means it can be crippled in some cases in some matchups, especially if there are hazards up. So don't let those hazards get up, or at least stay up. Like I said, Armaldo's mandatory. It helps against some fire teams thanks to its rock moves, etc. Scolipede is, I'm going to say required thanks to its speed boost plus Earthquake Rock Slide combo. It can provide a nice win con against fire and flying teams, which also threaten Bug severely. If you can weaken them first, it can sweep. So yes, Scolipede, very useful. Moving on to Dark. Dark's okay. One of the middle tier ones, like Bug was. Thankfully, it doesn't have to worry about the Stealth Rock's weakness, so it can focus on other things. Bisharp is going to be mandatory thanks to Stab Ironhead. It will threaten to sweep fairy teams on its own. And also Stab Sucker Punch is always great, no matter the setting. However, it will be basically useless against fighting teams, as they will resist Sucker Punch and probably outspeed, and he's super weak to them. So yeah. Houndoom is going to be mandatory because it's neutral to Bug and Fairy, as well as the fact that it is one of the only good special attackers Dark has, and it also provides a nice immunity to fire, thanks to Flash Fire. Crawdaunt and Sharpedo is kind of like a choice sort of thing. You can run both, but you probably only want to run one of them. Either way, they do different things. Crawdaunt wall breaks, Sharpedo cleans, and revenge kills. Both of them help against ground and fire teams with their water stabs, which usually give dark teams a hard time. But Crawdaunt can break through the walls and has knockoff, which helps it against the normal core of Porygon 2 and Chansey, which can be hard to break through otherwise. And Sharpedo cleans and can have coverage for fighting types with Scent Headbutt. Sableye is necessary because in Pixelmon we do not have Mana Buzz, so this is your main answer to fighting types defensively as a switch-in. So Ghost typing will help with that. You get priority recovery, can burn, foul play, etc. It's going to be your main answer to fighting types overall, as I said. So yeah. Tyranitar doesn't provide any useful typing or anything like that, or provide the Spadef boost like he has for rock teams, but he's just generally useful. He's strong, bulky if you put some investment in. There's not really a reason not to run Tyranitar, but yeah, always a useful Pokemon. Moving on to Dragon. Dragon used to be really good. Dragon's not good anymore. It's definitely not good in Pixelmon, where you're forced to run Dragonair because the laddies are banned. Uh, you have to run Altaria and Dragonair, which is just a double slap in the face, because Altaria is trash. Altaria does nothing well. Yeah, it has good special bulk, but so does Dragonite. Yeah, it has Heal Bell, but so does Dragonite. Yeah, it has Dragon Dance, but so does all of these things. Well, not Flygon in Gen 6, but you get the point. Altaria just sucks, and you use it because it's fully evolved, and you don't want to run Bagon or something stupid. Overall, it loses to Fairy, it loses to Ice. It loses to Ice, probably. Probably. Maybe 50-50 just because Ice is that bad, but yeah. Um, anyway, Electric, another very bad one. The only thing worse than it is probably Ice. Uh, why is it bad? Well, despite having only one weakness, it has very little to deal with that weakness. Your choices for non ground weak electric types are Zapdos, Emolga, and Galvantula. Emolga and Galvantula do not want to take hits at all because they're not bulky, so they're out, which leaves Zapdos, which also happens to have Defog, which is useful. But Zapdos is going to be your only answer to ground types, which is a problem. Likewise, Electivire is only here because he's the only good physical attacker outside of, I guess, Luxray. So he's your only answer to physical, special walls rather, and he's not even very good at that, let's be honest. Magnezone is here because Steel's a useful typing. He doesn't have bad stats. That's the only reason. He doesn't really. Magnet Pull's not too useful for him on the electric teams. And the ground weakness doesn't help. I'll say that much, obviously. Raikou, again, is here because of good stats, and that is the only reason. Electric has very poor options after these four. Luxray is probably going to be used for another physical attacker, and then after that you're going to have to run something really bad, like Lantern or something. Lantern does not do you any favors, unlike it does for the water team. Fairy. Uh, Fairy is not a good one either, unfortunately. A lot of the ones I missed covering the first time around are pretty bad. Gardevoir's here to kill poison types, basically. Same thing it was doing, the opposite of what it was doing for the Psychic team, where it was there for dark types. Mawile is to be defensive switch into poison and steel types, but its stats suck, so it's not going to be able to do much to him, which is where Granbull comes in. He is also a defensive switch into poison and steel, thanks to Intimidate. Well, I will say physical poison and steels, thanks to Intimidate. But he does get Earthquake, so he can actually hurt those poison and steels, unlike Mawile, which gets special attacks, I guess, which it can use its base 55 special attack to utilize. Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Mawile. I wish you were Mega. But yeah. Then we have a Azumarill, not Sap Sipper. Huge power, as I'm sure you can guess. It's a good wall breaker, strong in general. That's why you're using it. Togekiss is here for its luring capabilities. Babiri Berry lets it take a steel attack once, and it then uses Aura Sphere or Fire Blast to kill the target, either Bisharp or Caesar, depending on what's out. It can be used for other things, obviously, but those are the main uses. And then Air Slash, Serene Grace for those sort of things. You know how that works. Alright. Fighting. Fighting is pretty good. However, they are missing a Psychic switch in because they don't have Scrafty, which is a pretty big deal. They have a horrible matchup against Psychic teams because of that. But you're going to use Lucario for special attacking purposes, probably, as well as being a kind of a switch into Psychic moves, I guess. You're not running him defensive, but he can take a Psychic move, thanks to Steel typing. Breloom's there for Spore and Mach Punch. These guys aren't really fast on their own, so priority is nice. Heracross is here to kill Psychic and Ghost types. Probably Choice Scarf, probably Moxie, which is what most people like to run, so that's good news. Gallade versus Medicham, same thing as we argued for Psychic, but Gallade's probably going to win here thanks to higher bulk.
User entered your
He's your
channel.
only thing that resembles a switch into Psychic, thanks to Assault Vest. And the neutrality, still not a great one, but hey, you use what you can. Medicham, likewise, you can run him alongside Gallade, but I would not run him over Gallade. And the rest is up to you. Fire, pretty good overall, honestly. Despite the Stealth Rock weakness, they have some really strong wall breakers. They can kind of deal with their weaknesses. But Torkoal is mandatory for Rapid Spin because Charizard doesn't want to run Defog if he doesn't have to. And nothing else besides Moltres gets hazard removal. And Torkoal can serve as a physical wall. Charizard Y is here to help you against water teams with Solar Beam and Drought. That's just basically all he's there for, wall breaking, obviously as well. And as I've mentioned, this is the only set he will ever run. Fire Blast, Solar Beam, Focus Blast, probably Roost. I've seen some Flame Charge sets. I think they're kind of dumb. But hey, if you want to try and sweep, that works. Heatran's here for setting up rocks, as well as being a switch into rock type moves. Not a great switch in, since most of them have ground coverage as well, but hey, you can run Air Balloon or something. And then after that, you can run whatever else you want. Next we have Flying, which I think... I'm trying to remember where I left off before I started recording, but I'm pretty sure I didn't mention Flying. I think I started with Ghost. So yeah, Flying is one of the best monotypes. It can run either balance or offense. Balance is more popular, as is the case with most of these teams. So despite, unlike the other types which have Stealth Rock weaknesses, Flying can actually deal with it quite well, because literally like every Flying type gets defog. So if you're not going to struggle to find a defog user, you just won't. Skarmory is here for the neutrality to rock and ice, as well as offering hazards as well as defog. Not on the same set, mind you, but it can run either set. Zapdos is here for the neutrality to electric, as well as being the specially defensive counterpart to the Skarmory. He can also run defog. He probably will run defog in most cases. Skarmory will run hazards. Gliscor can wall break / stall break, as well as providing a neutrality to rock and an immunity to electric, which is very useful. Normally you'd run Landorus here, but we don't get Landorus, unfortunately. So Gliscor it is. Charizard Y, as I mentioned, wall breaker, neutrality to ice, that's useful. But beyond that, it's just wall breaking. I don't see a reason not to use him. Good typing for the mono. And then there's a lot of leeway after that for doing whatever else you want. You can run Gyarados or something if you feel like you're threatened by ice type still. So yeah, I think this is where I started recording with Ghost. If not, I can always like, I don't know, figure out how to edit it later. But if I didn't cover this, Ghost kind of sucks. Don't use Ghost. These are the Pokemon you should use if you are running Ghost for some reason. But I think I covered that already. So yeah, that's basically all I've got. This was geared more towards the Monotype tournaments. Uh, I guess you could use this knowledge to take on the gyms. It might not be quite as applicable, but yeah. So that's all I have. Kinda Madness is still here. He's a real trooper. But yeah, I think I'm gonna be done now. I've got somewhere to be soon, so thank you for showing up, or at least watching it afterwards. I'll post this to YouTube as soon as I get the chance. So thank you.